Man, people always make this look so easy. There we go. This one is way easier. Man, can you guys do this? It's one of the things, as long as I've been playing, I've always wanted to learn how to do. Yeah. On. I got it on that one. Yeah, I don't. Oh, that ain't. Oh. So close. Well, guys, welcome to episode 5. We got a good topic for you today. We got a guest back in the studio. Let's have a good time. Hey everybody, Scott Reek here with Trilogy Talk. Welcome to episode 5. We have Derek Broockerd back in the house with us. He took a 2-episode hiatus. He was just busy, he says, but we got him back either way. So we're going to conclude or move on. We got episode 5, and I guess before we jump into any topics, Derek, how have things been with you in the last, I guess, couple weeks?
Good. Busy. That's truly why I wasn't here. Few new topics to talk about probably. We've been selling off a lot of collectibles type discs, things like that. So it's been keeping me pretty busy.
Have you got a chance to even play around since then?
You know, with that 14 inches of snow or whatever we got, and it's really put the courses in bad condition. I've tried my best to stay off the course. So
did you see my guard review that I did in the snow?
I did.
I really wanted to do the review, but I
really enjoyed all the white prototypes for this winter weather.
Pause for a second. Just occurred to me. I may not have clicked record. I'm pretty sure I did, but maybe I didn't. I did. I'd rather stop now.
Isn't the red light
Oh, is that what that means?
Probably.
So. I'm sure. All right. Yeah, I haven't. I still haven't played. I did those testing, and I did the review, and I went to the Winter Marksman League over in Lawrence on Wednesday, which I did all right. I got 3rd place, and
didn't play the Ice Bowl.
No, I didn't. I was at both P Hill and the Prairie Center Ice Bowl here in Kansas City. I filmed at the Prairie Center one, and I just did some photography stuff at the P Hill one. My lower back's been hurting. I just really haven't had any interest in playing in this cold. So it's supposed to be a little bit nicer this weekend, so I might try to get out. So
yeah, I missed both Ice Bowls. My daughter had a basketball tournament this weekend, so we spent the whole weekend watching basketball.
So. All right, so one of the big topics that we're going to talk about today, I touched on it a little bit in episode 4 with Chad Kelly, but one of the things that me and Derek together know probably, I won't say we know the most of as far as people, but it's what we know the most amongst ourselves. We both have been involved with the collector market for many years. I've been a part of the collector market since well before Trilogy was even a thing, but even as a Trilogy brand from day one. Derek started in what, 2015? 2013. So he's been very thorough with it, and both between the two of us, we have a pretty extensive collection, but we have a lot of opinions about the collector's market. And so I want to spend a little bit of time on this episode, or it might be a lot of bit of time, so we'll see what happens. But either way, I think it's something a lot of you guys out there want to hear. And again, it's kind of our opinions about the market overall, but we're... why first runs are the way they are. Should they be first runs? Should they be prototypes? Should we have testers? What should they be doing with those discs? Types of things. But just from a collector's side, from our side, kind of how we feel about the way the market itself should be out there so it's accurate. A lot of things that have come out in the past years is they'll come out with thousands and thousands of a collector disc, like a first run or a prototype or something like that. But, you know, nobody makes 3,000 of a prototype. You know, a prototype is designed to be that item that you're trying to decide that that's what you want. You know, so when you get a disc for the first time and you're testing that mold, or you're testing to see if it's those flight, that's the prototype ultimately, or a tester even for that matter. But you can't have 3,000 prototypes, and I think that's one of the things that we've talked a lot about over the years is they need dynamic disc, Latitude 64, West Side. Those are things they need to work on, and we talk to those CEOs, specifically Jeremy, about those pretty regularly. And I think sometimes they listen to, or they do listen to those. But I don't know if that people always understand. I mean, they also have a business to run too, and I think at the end of the day, they're looking at bottom dollar, where we're looking at the resale value, the market value, what that disc's going to do in 10, 15, 20 years from now. You know, where Derek, he buys a lot of collector discs with the idea of getting them out to the fans. He has his collection, his one-on-one collection for himself that we use between his collection and mine for the exhibit that we do at the Glass Blown Open. But he collects specifically just his ones for him, and then the rest he puts out into the market, he uses for his business, makes a little bit of money from that. Where I create my collection for one, but I also back up a lot of discs. Up till real recently, I had several discs of a lot of several backups of a lot of collector discs. And the idea was always that then 10 years down the road, those discs even have more value, and people are looking for those discs. Because today, you know, like this coming month or here in February, when we get these first run Recoils and Pioneers, they're not really collectors yet. They're in the process of becoming a collector. They have the idea to become a collector, but at that moment, they're the first run. They're the only thing that exists. And they're going to make however many they make of it. So, all right. So, kind of my little spiel went a little longer than I kind of anticipated. But, all right, Derek, what are your thoughts, I guess, on how the Trilogy brands itself put out collector discs? You know, their idea of it versus the way it really should be.
I don't know. I think it's the job of people like Jeremy Rusko to worry about the bottom dollar, like you said earlier. It's not necessarily his job to worry about the collector market. That said, he does. I think that says something for who he is. He likes to hear the input. He likes to know what's going on. He does want this to be something where, you know, they can still move the amount of discs that they need to move, but potentially down the road, these are gaining value for customers and stuff. Because that's a win-win anyway, if you think about it. You know, I mean, if customers can somewhat invest in these discs, knowing that 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, they're going to turn them for some decent profit. That's a win-win. It gives them more reason to buy them in the first place. I do think there's some kinks in the system. Obviously, I don't agree with the number of prototypes that come out. However, they are changing up stamps and things like that now to at least, so you can at least separate between the prototypes. And I think the market as a whole just needs to adjust to that. They need to understand that. They need to say, okay, you know, a team prototype means it's a team test mold, basically. You know, yeah, the word prototype's still on it, but this is a team test mold. It's sent out, you know, 2 discs to every team player. So there's probably somewhere between 500 and 600 team discs out there on the market. The true Dimax prototype, there's going to be less. So there's going to be a handful, you know, 6, 8, 10 at the most. Usually they're going to be thrown. They're going to be used because those are the discs that truly came in to test. Those are the prototypes. Those are the discs that may have changes made to them. You know, that disc may not be the same as the disc that gets released. And I think the market as a whole right now in Trilogy is having trouble understanding because of the word prototype being on all these different discs. I think they have trouble understanding the difference. So a disc with a prototype Dimax on it may not be gaining that value that it should be, as opposed to a disc that has, you know, the new ring on it or the team stamp on it or whatever. And they've got, like I said, they've got these 3 or 4 different variations. You know, you've got Dimax, you've got prototype, you know, actual foil, that makes it onto some. You've got the ring stamp. You've got the team prototype stamp. And so I can see the confusion. However, I think the fans can adjust to that confusion. I think they can learn what's what and adjust the value based on that. The one thing I push for, and I've asked Jeremy a little bit for, is maybe moving forward we can try better to keep track of the numbers. How many testers came in? How many Emacs prototypes are there? How many team discs are there? And it doesn't necessarily have to be specific to that exact number, but between 500 and 600 helps us a lot. It says, okay, there's 500 to 600 team prototypes out there, And like I said, I think it's great that he cares enough to listen to that, and that he wants to, he wants to build off of that. But at the same time, he, when the first runs come out, for example, he does. He has to control the number to an extent, but at the same time, he wants to make sure that every retailer has an opportunity to get those first runs in their store. And if he prints a set number, say he only prints 1,000 first runs, and Disc Golf Center, as an example, or something, orders 400 of them, or something along those lines, and maybe Infinite Discs orders 300 of them. Those last 300 aren't going very far amongst smaller retailers like myself and things like that. So I can see both sides of it. I do think, like I said, there's some kinks in it, but I think it's a work in progress. I think sometimes you look at the market and it's just stagnant. It doesn't seem like anything's happening.
Sure.
It seems like people have given up on it at times, and rather than adjust, they just give up. And I don't necessarily think that's great. There's a lot of things about it I don't understand. I mean, I can watch a Proto Ring Trespass one day sell for $60, and I just watched one on auction the other day go for like 120. I sold a bunch of them for like 50.
Not a lot of that, though, to me, is the right people at the right time. I mean, the disc golf market is a lot like a stock market. I mean, and it also depends on, there's so many variables. Like this time of year, it's slower. People are sitting on their phones, sitting at the home or on the computer. They're not doing anything. They don't have anything else to do in a lot of big parts of the country, where big parts of the summer, I mean, normal disc sales sometimes are dictated that way too.
Right.
But when you're at the summer and you're spending your nights at leagues, out practicing, on the weekends, getting ready to go for a tournament, preparing for a tournament, things like that, those keep people off of computer or collectors, things like that. This time of year, people don't have anything else to do, and I think
funds get a little tighter when you're out playing tournaments and things like that.
Versus... So you never know. I mean, I do think that those kind of things change. But yeah, just.
But I guess what I'm saying is the fluctuation in the market, I think, confuses people, and it at times I feel like it scares them away from collecting. Because they don't know, is 120 too much to pay for this, or should I be paying 60? Or because they're seeing such an imbalance in prices. And
well, I'll say real quick to those that are listening, that's just kind of my disclaimer, and it's kind of the obvious answer, but I didn't mean to cut Derek there off. But if you're ever looking at spending large amounts on a disc, you're not sure what you're going to spend on a disc or whether you should spend that much on a disc. The phrase that's always thrown out there is the disc's worth what you're willing to pay for it, which is true. But you have to look at what you're trying to do with it. You're trying to add it to your collection. I will pay almost double sometimes for a disc if it means adding it to a collection that I can't find, or maybe I don't even want to spend the time to find it. Sometimes spending an extra however much dollars is worth not hunting down or worrying about the next time one will come on. If you've been collecting for a year, even say, and you've been looking for a ring stamp trespass, you haven't seen one, and all of a sudden, or you've seen one but you missed it, and it went for $60. This time it comes up, it's at $120. It is a double value. It's a $60 value, but is it worth it to you to not have to worry about missing it again, to add it to your collection? If you're just going to get it, you think that someday you're going to flip it and resell it? Probably not. You need a margin on it, so obviously you want to get it for as low as possible. But if you're a true collector and you're trying to collect, that's what creates those values. So, and sometimes we'll even see discs that are low.
Well, I do think you have to determine what kind of collector you are. If I'm buying a disc that I know I already have and I know it's going to end up going back out to the market, yeah, I'm going to look at a decent price. But if I'm buying it to keep, or if you put you know, a dynamic disc prototype in front of me that I've never seen or I don't have, especially a Dymax version, you know, and one that I know is limited to a handful or whatever, I'm willing to spend a lot more on it.
Yep.
But I also know that, first of all, you're going to see them very few and far between. They're not going to just pop up. And I know that I'm going to sit on it. You know, if I do move my dynamic disc collection, it's going to be, you know, down the road, a long time down the road. It's not going to be tomorrow. It's not going to be a week from now. A lot of collectors are flippers. There's a difference between a collector and a flipper. A flipper's buying with the intent of turning it around in a week or 2 weeks or whatever. A collector's sitting on it. If you have the willingness to sit on a disc, I've got 1,000 of them right now for sale that are perfect. You sit on it, and 5 years down the road, you know, the gain is there. And if you can afford to do that, if you can afford to snag stuff here and there and just sit on it, great. Tuck it away in a closet, tuck it away in a box or whatever, and forget you have it. You know, a Moonshine Air Judge, when I picked up my Moonshine Air Judges, were $35 or $40.
Yeah.
You know, now they're reaching $95, $100. I've even seen them higher. That it's kind of calmed back down. It had that rise, and then it kind of calmed back down.
When I got my Moonshine Air Judges, I got them at wholesale TFR prices.
Moonshine's Seafoam Verdicts, you know, you're seeing hit $65 an hour or whatever. You know, and I know a lot of people from AM Worlds have those, and if they just sat on them, or, you know, they picked a couple of them up here and there when they were $25, $30 and they're sitting on them, now they're doubling their money.
Yep.
You know, it really comes down to what kind of collector you are, you know. Like I said, the longer you can sit on something, the more valuable it's going to become.
Sure.
So
that's like a lot of things. I mean, I used to always say, you know, when I collected items before, like baseball cards, you know, which I know you used to do years ago, is, you know, you'd buy these things and cards, comic books, things like that, and you see them go up in value. Well, it's almost hard to ever want to sell those things because, one, you either don't want to sell it because it's still going up in value, or the value's now gone down and you know what it used to be. And now if something used to be worth $60 and now it's $60 and now worth $120. But then
right, and I think that's where you have to be smart, you know.
Yeah.
And like you said, I used to do cards also, and in the card market, you always had to be smart. It's, you know, if this guy's the hot up and coming rookie and everybody's paying stupid money for his card right now, you're going to get rid of it, you know?
Right?
And then you can pick more of them up later. You can pick 5 of them up for the price that you had one down the road. But if it's an old vintage retired type guy or somebody that you're going to sit on, you know, for years to come, and down the road, you know, he passes away maybe or something like that, and that's when you hit, you know, autograph peaks and things like that. You have to look at that stuff. You have to decide, you know, when's the best time to sell this? What's you know, what's the hype behind this? Things like that. If everybody's flooding the market with the same thing, you know, everybody in the world is flooding the market with VIPX Warship or first runs or whatever, that's not the time to sell.
No.
The time to sell is, like, just as an example, right now, I can't keep fluid plastic in stock.
Right.
Well, of course I can. It's out of production. Everybody that had fluid plastic has now, you know, they're piling up on it, so because it's out of production, they know they can't get it. But as a retailer, most of those people, you know, that stuff was moving off the shelves. They were getting rid of it.
Yep.
You know, so now you can't get it anywhere. So where do you go? You have to go to the person that has it. And I'm still giving good prices on it, luckily.
Right.
But those people are sitting on that stuff and piling it up because they know they can't get it later.
And I'm the type of collector that the moment I see a change in the market, like when that fluid plastic, the moment they said that fluid plastic was discontinued, I bought up.
Right.
It's, you know, several. I mean, I didn't go crazy on it, but every time I went to the factory, I was picking up a couple each time, you know, or things like that. And you've seen where all of a sudden I have, you know, a pretty good amount of some of that comparison to most people. And the idea there is, again, is to have it because I know that market's going to be bigger down the road. It seems like no matter how bad a disc is, like there could be discs that are on the shelf that they could not sell for the life of them. But the moment they're gone, they're valuable. I mean, they're really like the Moonshine Air Judge was that way. Right. You know, the reason they had created that large mass amount of bar stamps, or one of the reasons, is they weren't moving on TFR. There were some weight issues and stuff like that in there as well, but they weren't moving. They only had the 6 or 7 or custom stamps, and they're like, we need to do something with these, or all of a sudden they'll get pushed into mystery boxes or something like that. But that's a whole nother kind of collector.
Well, I don't know if people don't remember, but years back, 3 or 4 years ago, All these first run and proto felons we're seeing were in mystery boxes.
Yeah.
They were in DD's holiday mystery box.
I remember that.
Because DD had just piles of them. And now, here we are 4 or 5 years down the road, and I guarantee everybody that spent $60 or $70 or whatever the cost of the mystery box was, is wishing they'd have held on to the felon that was in it.
Yeah.
Because now you're seeing the felons go for 50, 55, 60. The protos are even reaching up over 100.
Yeah.
And nobody has them, you know, because everybody moved them at those times. And that you know, that's now a run that you can't get your hands on. And it's going to be like that with anything out of production. You know, look at people now going crazy trying to find an Opto Trident, you know, and if you do find one, you're probably paying a premium for it. Or you're pulling B-Trib's leg and hoping he'll let go of one. But, you know, you really just have to be smart in how you collect. You know, you have to think about it. You have to sit on it. You have to be patient. And that's why a lot of these people, you know, that are backing off the market and that are scared of the collector market just aren't approaching the collector market the right way. At least that's my feeling on it.
No, I agree. And, you know, I think kind of going a step back here a little bit, I think a lot of the manufacturers are doing what they think they need to do for this. I mean, I've talked to a lot of manufacturers, and most manufacturers will say they are not in the business of collecting. They're worrying about the collector market. They're in the business of getting discs in people's hands, whether it's through retail stores, brick and mortar big box stores, things like that, schools, whatever the case may be. They want to get the discs out because they're bringing in so much off the factory. They don't have the time to focus on 100 discs, 300 discs, you know, whatever that is. They're talking thousands and multi-thousands. I know me and Derek have joked many times is because I feel like the Trilogy Collector market is so different. And it is slightly different. Again, I work with other manufacturers too. It just seems a lot tighter niche with the Trilogy. But we've joked is DD needs to hire a full-time person, and that's their whole job, is just to worry about numbers and collector discs. You know, when something like a mystery box comes out and there's a special disc, documenting. When discs come off the containers, documenting. When there's TFR discs that are on the shelf, documenting. You just never know. I mean, a disc can come out and they'll be on the shelf, and again, they could be popular, or they'll have 300 of, they'll get off the container so you don't think anything of it, and that's the last time you ever see it.
Well, and the thing is that even from DD's standpoint, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Soft Justice. I don't think they ever anticipated, you know what, we're not going to be making more Soft Justices. Right. There was 300 original stock stamp Soft Justices or something like that came in as all. So if you have a stock stamp Soft Justice, you're actually sitting on something there. Yeah. That's and there's so many people that want to throw them and stuff, and everybody's like, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. Well, there's production problems with it. Yeah. So now they've determined, okay, you know, this is not a disc that wants to be made in soft plastic. We're not going to make the Soft Justice anymore. But that wasn't known probably at the time that it was made.
Nope.
So now, you know, now they've taken a disc that was meant to be a stock run, and it's turned into a gem. You know, it's turned into something that collectors and throwers alike want. You know, throwers are paying big money just to be able to throw them. Collectors are paying big money to sit on them. And, I mean...
And they came out with those soft...
God, I wish I had all the ones I let go for $17 back or $14 or whatever. You know?
They did all those Soft Justices in stock. And I don't know if you remember, but then months later, we had already knew that people were looking for them. And they had that one TFR run of all the blues and reds. And we attacked those with knowing that we didn't even know the full scope of the situation at that time. We just knew that who knows if these are going to be again. They have been in high demand, but mostly because they're in high demand. And at that time, we were doing them truly as a fundraiser for tournaments more than we were from a collector standpoint.
Well,
but those ones even became an additional value to that collection.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is you just never know what's going to happen. I've heard of them dropping the molds and the molds getting broke. Yeah. And suddenly a mold has to be, you know, it has to be remolded or whatever, and that causes a slight variation in flight or something like that. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Yeah. So, so documenting these numbers and stuff can lead, I mean, yeah, maybe 10 years down the road, nobody's going to care how many stock run, you know, Justices ever came out or whatever. No. But they are going to care how many first runs came out, or they are going to care how many, you know, maybe in the case of the Justice, how many came out before the flight numbers changed or whatever, you know, or...
But even like they had the glow sparkle defenders, those silver defenders, those anomaly glow ones. You know, again, those are just lucid defenders, sparkle defenders. They weren't intended to be moonshine, but they were moonshine. and they were very popular at the time.
And I think because they didn't know that, that makes it a little hard to keep track of numbers.
No, I'm sure. Like but even a guesstimation, and I know some of these are more pipe dream, and it's really nobody's concerned but me, you, and a handful of people who probably really care about it. So I mean, that's just more where the conversation's going. But yeah, there's so many things that change. I remember the Air Trespass, that when the Air Trespass first came out, they ran a full. I don't remember. It was a bigger run than the Justices, but it wasn't a full run, I don't think. And then they didn't make that for quite a while.
Yeah, a couple of years.
And I remember I was collecting those. Every time I got my hand, could get a chance to get those at a decent price. And then as soon as they came back out, we kind of treated it almost like that soft justice of who knows when they're going to get those again. Well, now there's a production and they've kept up on their, the Trilogy brands as a whole haven't kept up always on those Air discs. But that Trespass was one that could have potentially have been something. And it turned out to be nothing. And luckily all the extras I have, I throw the Air Trespass. So I'm not too concerned about the extras that I had. But
well, but even then, an older run versus a new run, things do change, not intentionally, but things do change. I mean, just the other day, somebody was telling me the new Air Sword and the old Air Sword are not even, they don't fly the same.
Well, sure.
So you still have these people searching for the old Air Sword versus the new Air Sword. And Opto Moonshine Pure is another example. They just announced that they are going to run it this year. I know for a fact it was not on this year's production schedule. However, there's such a demand for it, I think they've found a way to get it in this year's production schedule. But that disc ran out quickly before, and that's a disc that a lot of people wish they'd have sat on, because then they went another year without being able to get their hands on it, and they needed them. I think when you find a disc in general, whether it's collector disc or not, if you like a disc and you really, really enjoy that disc, you need to put some discs. You need to have 5 or 6 backups at least. I keep 10.
It's funny how many discs come out though that turn into collector discs that aren't intentional at all, or a collector to some degree. And for someone like me who collects pretty much a wide variety of everything that DD does, but we have things like the Justice, but then you have things like the pre-made in Sweden discs. You have discs like where the Justice, the flight numbers changed. I think it was on the Justice, where the Fade, the third number, whatever number that is, it changed.
Yeah, it's the Fade.
The Seer, the numbers were wrong. When they very first.
No, that third number's the turn. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. Seer, when they first came out, those numbers were wrong. And it's just funny how a disc, the tilted sword,
and
sometimes it's just a hot stamp change.
The Seer's another great example. The Seer came out. The flight numbers were accidentally printed wrong.
Yeah.
But that first batch, as soon as it was discovered that was printed wrong, and yes, the Seers never became one of the most popular discs in the world. But there are still. I only throw the wrong number one, the air numbered ones. And I'm a big fan of the Seer. I throw it for my turnovers. I don't throw it forehand, so I love the disc. But that's how I set my runs apart. But that particular run, I know it's a different run than the other run. And I can tell that by the stamp.
Right.
But I also feel like it flies slightly different. And I do mean slightly. It's not a huge difference, but it flies slightly different,
right.
And so that original run's what I like, And I would much rather have grabbed 10 of those than have to go out and search for them now and pay a premium every time I want one.
Wouldn't it be cool, just slight little rabbit hole, but I think it'd be cool if they were able to. And I know it would cost a different plate every time they did it, but it'd be neat if they could change the foil with every run. I mean, if every run is running 1,500 plus discs, which I'm going based off of kind of the information we have with like the exclusives and stuff like that. If they're running 1,500, in batches of 1,500, I almost feel like they could have a plate. The plate costs, $75 or whatever it is for them to use that plate. But there are things like the Seer, the Tilted Sword King. There are variations when a stamp changes that's what we use to define. But there are a lot of people, because molds do slightly change due to many different factors, cooling or whatnot. But it'd be neat if you were able to look at a stamp and say, oh yeah, that's a third run because it has a third on it. Or something's changed slightly in the hot stamp itself, something to identify that difference. Some manufacturers,
Why couldn't they put that in the... I wonder if they could program the machine that puts the weights on to do that.
On the bottom?
174 grams, S3
V1 or something,
S4 or whatever, and that tells. Now, I mean, at some point you just, I mean, on a more popular disc, what are we on, like the 95th run of Emacs or something? I mean,
maybe, but like like I think like Millennium is an example. They do 1.1, 1.2, and I know some of those discs are like 1.23. Because those do run. So you're talking 23 runs. That number does change. There are some companies. There's a company I think called Mint Discs, and they keep serial numbers on everything. So there's ways to do it.
I think that's a chore.
And it is. I'm sure it is. And maybe that's again another job that that has to be.
But it's not. I really feel like the biggest time it's a factor is on your early runs, and a lot of that's probably because side, I don't think it's just that. I think over time your mold probably wears a little bit. So I always feel like the original mold is what the disc is intended to fly like. This is what people bought and loved. The Truth's a great example. I mean, we all know that the Truth changed over time, and that's why we now have the Emacs Truth. Well, that Truth, if those original Truths, everybody looks for the one that says Eric McCabe, 2010 World Champion. Well, the fact is you can have a 2010 World Champion that came from like 2016, and you can have one that came from like 2014, and they're not going to fly the same just because that stamp's the same. Yeah. But had those early ones been marked somehow, T1 or something to that effect on the bottom, then now you can set them apart. So you can't always just look at stamp. I know it's the same way with the Tilted Sword.
No, but if
everyone says, "Oh, it's a Tilted Sword King," there's a big difference between a sticker-weighted Tilted Sword King, which is like an early run King, and a late run Tilted Sword King.
But even on that Truth, if they ran 3 years of that Truth using that same stamp, knowing that over the course of those 14, 15, 16, they changed for whatever for the reason they did. If they were identified between each run, then you might say, "I want a World Champion Truth that is version 3 because I know that's the understable. You know what? I don't want the understable version. I want the original version." And you can't identify the difference without throwing it. I mean, now you just go to an Emacs Truth if you want the original Truth. But some people still may want to say, "You know what? I want the Truth in the way it was intended," because for whatever reason they don't like the Emacs Truth or they don't think it's the same thing. So, I mean, again, something to think about, Trilogy company. So, all right. So, staying on the same topic, I want to do a breakdown and see if we can figure this out. So Jeremy comes up to us and says, and he hasn't, I'm saying if he was to come up to us, and he was to come up and say, "Derek, Scott, tell me from day one, from the time we decide we're going to create a disc to the time it's released, what order should they go in?" So the first disc, Tomas is out there field testing. He's getting a disc. We don't even know what it's named yet. We just know that we're looking for a disc that's got these flight numbers. So he's got discs, and they're keeping it. What is that?
To me, that's a prototype.
That's a prototype, correct. So now they've established this is the disc we want, prototype. So now we're going to run the discs that we're going to send to the team, because those are the first people to get them on their hands. Are those prototypes or are those team testers? What are you calling those?
I've honestly, my suggestion to them was to bring back the test drive. Okay. There was a I don't know if you, I guess you don't have it on display. There was a Dymax stamp, and they obviously they need to make it into a foil, but there was a Dymax stamp they put on some Enforcers and Justices, and I believe they were sent to people like Matt Lloyd and Stephen Story and people like that. And they were intended for people to come in the store and be able to grab them and throw them, or come to the RV and grab them and throw them, or whatever. And they literally say test drive on them. Yep. There was some Enforcers that just say tester on them. Yep. I could see it being something like Team Dynamic Disc Tester, Team Latitude 64 Tester, or just Team Tester, whatever.
And all those discs that we just field tested for the 2019, those were handwritten with the word tester.
Right.
And I think that is fine. I think having those handwritten, even though they're just scribbled on the top tester, separates those specific discs out from the team testers.
In the end, the value of a team prototype or one that says team tester is going to be the same.
Sure.
It's not going to change because of the wording.
No.
The wording is just helping the customers and the fan base understand the difference.
Not unless something changed in the mold or something like that.
And then following that, I think that's when you go. Now you're going into production. Now, if they're going to have a special buyback release, I don't know what you put on that, but I know like last year, I think it was last year, the Buyback stores could each buy 2 prototypes of the Maverick Getaway and Captain,
right,
or something like that. Can't remember.
Well, so the next step then is, so then you got first runs, and this, where I think is a little bit different is the way it works now is, even with these new discs coming out, a first run will come out, and 2 weeks later a stock will come out. Well, the stock and first run are the same run. They're not, as far as I understand, those are not 2 separate runs. Those are still coming from the same run. They're just stamped.
I don't think that's always true. That depends. It depends how many they ran.
Well, sure.
I mean, obviously, if they're running...
Well, then that's the breakdown. If they truly ran a specific run...
They are probably coming over at the same time.
Yeah. So if they if they ran 1,500 discs, because that's what they're telling us is a run. I mean, it could be varied and stuff like that, but for base purposes, if 1,500 discs, and there's a run, those are first runs. If then they run another run later on, separated from that first run, then those are stock. From my understanding, a lot of times, even talking to the powers that be, is a lot of times those are the same thing, the first runs and the stock. There probably are opportunities or times that those do separate, but that's where I think...
Well, and I don't feel like they need to be necessarily different runs. It's based on, when it comes to the first run and the stock, that's all based on release time.
But I would like a separation. I would like, if a first run is a first run, stock is not a first run. Theoretically, to me, a stock should be the second run. Stock is now production. It is, from here on out, this is what we're doing with it. The first run indicates what this is. Prototype indicates what this is. Stock means this is...
Well, but even if you're running that second run before you ship it over,
right?
It's still the second run off the...
If it's truly a second run.
Well, it has, but if there's more than 1,500 of them and they're running them in increments of 1,500, then it has to be the second batch.
But is it a separate run if they're running concurrently? Just because they run 1,500...
Well, yeah, no, I see what you're saying there, but...
Because it's still coming from the same batch machine. Nothing's changed as far as how they...
But I think right now you're saying that, they need to separate that or whatever. Well, first of all, from a cost point, for DD to have them ship 1,500 over separate, just to say, okay, these were ran separately, is just silly.
Well, no, but
you're also assuming that every manufacturer does that, and I would say every manufacturer probably does this in a similar way.
Sure, but then when they stamp it, though,
release it.
It's not how many they make. They know how many. If they run 1,500 on the first one, and those 1,500 should be first run, period, in my mind. Now, maybe they run the next day, or somewhere, whatever identifies as, whatever the manufacturer identifies as how there's a different run. Like, now we're running them again, then that one should be stock. If they're running 1,500, they're saying 500 of them are first runs, and then the remaining are stock, then they have, I don't think they should do that.
No, and I don't think that's what they're doing. I don't think that's what they're doing at all. I think there's first of all, there's never, that I can think of, there's never been a first run that there was only 500 of it in the first place.
Well, then it goes on to my next part of the question. How many first runs should there be from a collector standpoint? 1,500?
I think, yeah, actually, if run increments are generally set in 1,500, which is what it seems like they are, then yeah, I believe 1,500. Now, my understanding is they break it that way. They break it down that way usually based on the, I believe the machine's holding enough to run 500, 500, 500,
sure,
or whatever. So they're changing colors in between. And when they do first runs, I'm assuming they change that color a little more frequently, because we do tend to see more than 3 colors.
Well, we know there's variations. And 1,500 is just a generalized number that we're using. Sometimes they'll run more,
I think
they'll run less. But
what I didn't like was, I think it was last year, the year before, whatever, we could pre-order and we could request a number of first runs that we wanted. So they knew how many they were running up front, which is fine. Those were all first runs. But from a collector standpoint, it just got to be too large of a number. If we as a market order 3,000 first runs, then on that first run they run 3,000 of them. That's just a lot. That's
sure. And I'm talking about there from a collector, specifically just from a collector.
But again, that's not. I mean, it's not their responsibility to care about the collector market. That's just something they're trying to help us with.
Oh no, and
it's
I know
something
that
they're doing. So,
but from our view of what we're discussing today if they were listening to this, if they were going to sit down and actually, if they were going to take anything that we're saying with a grain of salt, those are, I guess, where I'm trying to break down of this is how we'd like to see it. Obviously, yes, we're not a charge of production. We don't write checks to payroll, or we don't see the bottom dollar and all that stuff how it works. So there's probably factors in there.
Well, and I think the one,
but from a collector side,
the one negative for DD right now is, I don't know, it's a positive and a negative. And I'm not asking them to change this by any means. I love it about them, but they're so open with their information. You know, you can't tell me that Innova's going to tell you how many of their first runs came off the run. They're not going to tell you that. You know, they don't, even if their first run and their stock was the same, they're not going to tell you that.
Right.
They're not going to tell anybody that. You know,
they do to some degree, actually, but I don't know how they break it apart. It's been a long time.
Well, let's put it this way: I don't think they want that to be public knowledge.
Probably
I don't
not.
think they're intending for that to be public knowledge. You know, because you're just adding backlash there. I mean, you're just opening up a can of worms you don't want to open up. So,
well, the big picture in all of it is, so we'll conclude here with the collector side of it. But the big picture is what they're doing is what even the Trilogy brands itself are doing is they're not doing anything wrong per se. I mean, there's things that we can definitely fix on and improve on. They're always listening to us and working, not us, I say the community, not me or Derek specifically, but they're listening to the people, and Jeremy shows that all the time when he does different things. And I like that that's what they're doing. I don't think there can be a perfect system. We can have one way, but the next collector could be totally different.
No, what we have to remember, and I think a lot of people forget this is a baby company in disc golf. I mean, they're very new to disc golf. Every year they're changing.
Yeah.
Every time you turn around, something's changing, and they're not changing to annoy the fan base or changing to upset people. They're changing because they're learning.
Sure.
You know, they're learning as they go. They're trying to get this. I mean, every year that collector part of stuff that they do does change a little bit because they are concerned about it and they are trying to help the market. So, you know, things change. And I mean, eventually, I think they'll get a set way and they'll say, you know what, we like the way this worked. This is what we want to go with. But until then, you know, as a fan, you have to be patient and you have to understand that things are slowly changing and hopefully for the better.
And we see that every year. I mean, where, you know, last year we had to pre-order those first runs and prototypes, things like that. They had you know, the buyback. I mean, the buyback even has changed over the course of years. How they're doing those SE discs, how they're released, how they're getting them, how they're able to distribute them, because they're learning from that, just like how they're learning on the distribution. And I absolutely agree with that. Overall, I'm very happy with it. And I mean, we're both big collectors for a reason. Obviously, if we didn't like it, we'd spend our money elsewhere. But it does make us happy, I think.
No, and I'm not.
In the right way, and
even with the way things change, I've never been afraid to put my money into a dynamic disc or Latitude 64 or West Side disc, because I do know that those eventually the kinks are going to be worked out, and all this early stuff, it's just going to be even more valuable at some point. I mean, even if there is 600 team prototypes or whatever out there, 300 of them are most likely flying because every team member is expected to test them and is going to test them. The others are getting out. So maybe you have another 300 that are sitting out there on the collector market or whatever, but they still are something different. And down the road, even if they change the stamp or whatever, it's still going to be something different. It's still going to set it apart, and you're going to know this was it. This was the original disc that came out for everybody to test throw and things like that. I mean, you're still going to know that.
Right.
It's just, like I said, it's the correction needs to probably come in just a way that fans can understand it better.
Okay.
Fans just, I think, especially what it really comes down to is there's so many newer fans. Every time somebody new comes in, they have to be somewhat educated on it because maybe the way it's happening now isn't the way it happened a year ago before they came in, know? So they're just having to be educated and taught,
Sure. And I do have the goal of, specifically for those new players is, for those who haven't seen, I put out a video for the history of the Dynamic Disc Moonshine Eric Judge. And the whole reason I really created that is because there's people that come out all the time and say, why does this have this value? What's special about this disc? How come they don't make it? What's the story behind this? So I created that video just to teach that. And I have future goals of more videos to talk about, like why there's pre-made and sweet, or pre-made and sweet, and why there's a difference between a truth and Emacs truth. I mean, these variations that kind of separate collectors. or change why we look at a disc differently. I'm going to eventually work on creating videos to do that. I do, you know, I said we'll move on. Those
Can I just add one thing real quick?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these are what you're talking about here, pre-made in Sweden, things like that. These are questions that we get every single day from fans,
and that's why I want to.
I don't know. Maybe these people can put these questions in the comments or something, so that we can hit on these. Yeah, put these in the comments. You know, if you don't understand the difference between lava plastic and lava effect, if you don't understand what pre-made in Sweden is, or things like that, or any kind of collector question you have, maybe you're new to collecting, you're trying to get into collecting, put it in the comments, and maybe we can address it on a future episode, because these are questions I know personally I get them every single day.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, put them in the comments, and we'll address them the best we can, so that you do understand, and maybe you can refer back to this later down the road if you need questions answered or somebody asks you or whatever.
Right. I'd also like to know what you collect. I mean, if you have questions and things like that, feel free to put them in there, post them, and let us know what those questions are. If you understand some, don't understand something, maybe you disagree or you agree with what we've said. Maybe you know something that we don't. I mean, a lot of this information is only, like everything else, is things that we've learned over time. But we're not every place all the time. So there's things that we definitely could have misinterpreted. Maybe you need to be explained because you've misinterpreted it. But so we can have that debate and conversation. The only way we can all become knowledgeable about this is to get all those pieces of information. So, but also, maybe you collect something that we haven't even talked about. There's, you know, I collect specific things, Derek collects specific things, but we all have our own collections. You know, like Earl Young collects the Moonshine Misprint Saint type of thing. That's a special anomaly to that. There's, what, 6 of those, right?
I believe it was 9.
Okay, 9. You know, the Cenuses, some of the old discs. Maybe you collect something we haven't even thought about. Maybe you're the biggest Northman collector, and you have... I just threw that off the top of my head because I can't imagine a Northman collection. Well, actually, I take that back. I know all the very initial... start were with the Northman, but I mean any disc really for that matter, because I'd like to learn that, and maybe those are things that I put some energy into afterwards to let the world know that your collection exists, or I want to learn as an overall collector what collections exist, or Derek does as well too, especially when we do the exhibit with GBO or things like that. So again, as a community, we can only be as good as all the information we have. So, all right, Derek. That's a little bit on the collector stuff. We can touch on that more in future episodes. Let's get into just some of the trilogy stuff. There's actually been quite a few little things. Seems like it's been taking place. Sometime this week, for those who didn't know the Buyback program, the special edition Recoil and Pioneer come out.
Right.
If you don't have a Buyback store in your area, reach out to Dee Dee on, or have your local store reach out on how to do that. But that's that first release. Then I can't remember, I think, 2 weeks after that is when the first run comes out for the Recoil and the Pioneer. And then 2 weeks after that is when the stock releases. So either way, starting this week, we're going to start seeing that production general public, not just the prototypes that the teams have. I am kind of curious to see, since all those plastics we've had have been in that Opto, except for the putters, have been in that Opto. I'm curious to see what the SE feels. You know, if that SE is going to be the Fusion X style plastic that we've had in the past. What blend, how that's going to feel.
I don't remember. Did they announce that?
I just remember them saying SC. And SC, I don't think has always been the Fusion X. And for those who don't know, that they're like the Felon is an example that calls Blend X. That's actually a Fusion X. The Maverick that they released last year was SE, but it was actually a Fusion X. I don't know that I can say that every time the SEs come out since the Buyback or the X material has been a thing was on there. But either way, I'm kind of...
Special edition Fusion Gold Tournament plastic that is softer than normal Fusion Gold Tournament plastic.
So I would say Fusion X if they're indicating that it's softer Fusion.
Yeah, it's definitely along the lines of a Fusion X plastic. Okay.
Well, they may not call it Fusion X, but it's still around that. I personally like softer discs. Like the Maverick is an example. I love the SE Maverick because I just like the feel in comparison to a lot of the discs. So I'm pretty excited about the Recoil on the Pioneer. Checking that out. Maybe we'll get a chance to see that later on in the week. Play with that a little bit. Maybe field test one of those. Did you get a chance to watch the update with Jeremy and Bobby yesterday?
I did.
So what'd you think about all that? So Air Sheriff. I like.
Yeah, the air. That was actually kind of a shock to me. Even
we've talked about that.
We've discussed it quite a few times. Yeah. But yeah, well, I believe last time I had mentioned the Air Sheriff, they were having trouble getting the Sheriff in air plastic, getting it to produce an air plastic. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that's what I was told. And now it seems they've got it figured out. So, I'm personally excited for that. I have a small arm. I want to see how this thing flies.
See, now going back to, you had just said something that kind of clicked to me, was going back to our whole collector discussion, was kind of also looking at the Judge. They had problems with, and I agree, I heard that same thing, they had problems with that Air Sheriff of getting it to form correctly. They got it to go through, or at least enough to make this run. Right. But on the back burner of my mind will make. Did you hear
that part? He just said enough to make this run.
Yeah.
So going back to the collector thing, we were just saying, if something happens and they can't produce this again, knowing they have had problems, if you love that disc, I recommend you get a couple of them just in case.
My Spidey sense says potential collector alert. It's to kind of make me think.
My first thought is sit on a few of these if you like it, just in case. Because, and I'm not saying it won't be made again. I'm not saying they didn't figure it out. I know nothing along that line. I'm just saying, just in case, this is a one-and-done deal. They didn't figure it out like they thought they did, or it's not worth the hassle that it takes to keep doing it. I imagine they can make more soft justices, but the problem is they're getting so much recycle in the ones that don't turn out that it's not worth what it takes to get the ones that are turning out.
Oh, yeah, and I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying that the bits of information we have line up with bits of information we've had in the past that have gone a certain way, but obviously at some point it's got to go the opposite way. They've got to figure it out and things like that. But still, talking about collectors, for those who are newer to it, those are the things that I listen for. It's kind of like in the stock market. You could go out and buy 10 because you think, with no intent to throw it, thinking it's going to be the best disc in the world, and next thing you know, they're run after run after run, and those 10 you have are still only worth stock price.
If you're going to take a chance on a disc, though, retail price right now is the time to take a chance on a disc. Don't take a chance on it when it's $40.
Correct. Buy it as a stock item. Buy it from your, if you have, buy it from your retail store as normal stock. And then if you do throw it, or it's something you think you're going to love, definitely get a backup of 5 or 10 of them, just so you don't have to worry about it if that scenario was to happen. Again, hopefully not, and hopefully they get it fixed. Nobody likes it when their favorite discs can't be run for whatever reason. But again, things happen. You just never really know. The Sheriff they talked about, one of the things that they announced yesterday, I can't remember the date. I guess I won't win it. June 29th? Yeah, I think it's June 29th.
June 29th.
The Disc Golf Experience in Denver.
First day of my vacation.
Yep. The Disc Golf Experience in Denver. So far now they did AT&T 3 times. They went to Nashville. They went to Chiefs, and now they're going to Denver. So I have been to all of them. Well, I didn't go to all the AT&T ones, but I have been to all the locations. You've been to Nashville and Chiefs.
Nashville, right? I miss Dallas.
So
thanks for rubbing that in.
But yeah, Denver, I think it's going to be pretty exciting. I don't know personally if I can go or not, but if I have an opportunity to go, I will. For those who have never been to one, it doesn't matter whether you like Colorado, it doesn't matter whether you're the biggest Bronco hater. If you have the opportunity to throw discs in a stadium, it's just the atmosphere itself is just awesome. It's fun. It's different than anything else. You feel like you're someplace special. You're virtually the only people in this entire stadium, and there's hundreds of disc golfers, not only counting from the tailgating that's happening out in the parking lot, but then on the field. And you're just walking through, and I don't know how Denver specifically is going to be set up at the pass, but you're throwing through, and you almost feel like you're doing something wrong. Because...
Well, if you're Mike Chisholm, you are doing something wrong.
You break lights. Yeah.
Breaks a neon light over the...
One of the concessions.
I just ratted you out, Mike, to everybody. Jeremy, it was Mike.
But don't you feel like you're almost doing something wrong? You're throwing down the tunnels. Like,
it's just fun, though. I mean, you can throw skip shots off the tunnels. And I watched a guy last year. Well, more than one, but you get up... If you pay for the VIP at least at Arrowhead, we were up top. I mean, very far up
Pretty
top.
sure Nashville did that too.
And you got to throw discs off basically as the highest point in the stadium that you could be. And I watched a guy throw a disc, and you're aiming at a disc or at a basket at midfield.
Looks like this, tiny.
On the 50-yard line. And then I watched this guy throw a disc, and this thing catches air, turns right, and goes through the uprights on the other end of the field. I mean, you just don't know what they're going to do. Nothing flies like you think it's going to fly.
The physics of flight from that high, I don't even know I don't understand how some could exist. I saw shots that Heiser turned over, then came back, and then I swear almost turned again, like it almost corkscrews. It's like, how does a disc fly?
All the wind swirling inside the stadium.
Just turns back and forth, and then...
I want to see Danny do his physics of flight from inside of there.
There you go, Danny. That's our request. We would like a mile-high physics of flight from as high up as we can go, and explain to us how the air and the flight plate lifts and all your jumbo.
Yeah, I don't know when they're opening the... I don't know when they're opening the... registration for this, but I do recommend paying a little bit extra and doing the VIP. Just that, I know it seems like a lot for the little bit extra that comes with it. I think you get some food and a couple discs or whatever. Or you don't get your discs. Like, you get the opportunity to throw a couple extra discs. Yeah. But throwing off of there is just a totally different experience. And they do that. Last year, at least, they had some extra discs up there. You can buy more. Buy some extra prime discs and throw as many as you can out there. It's just a blast. I mean, it's. And
you'll never look at that stadium again. For those who are local to Denver or go to those games, I know, like the Chiefs. When I go to a Chiefs game now from last year, I can't help but when I'm walking down the tunnels or like where the concessions are at, thinking like, "Ooh, I threw a shot over here. I hit this." Or at Arrowhead, they've got a spinning walkway, and I threw it out of the park. Because you remember that when I threw it, I skipped it. And went over I skipped it. I threw a sidearm skip, thinking it's gonna go right, but somehow it slingshot left, and it went out of the park.
I bring my kids. I bring everybody. It's a blast.
Yeah. But you'll never look at it the same
for a small fee, or they can play for a little bit bigger fee. And
you look at those uprights, and you think, you get so far all the stadiums at least you've gotten to throw from a middle section of the field through the uprights with the basket on their center, emblem, center logo. Again, you'll just never look at it the same.
I'm probably more excited about Denver than I have been any of them. I mean, Kansas City was nice because it was just down the street. But
it's a vacation in Denver, and get to play some Colorado courses, and so all right. So something that happened this past week that I'm pretty impressed with. So for those who don't know, Dynamic Discs has their Winter Marksman Leagues. And I know Derek hasn't dealt with this a lot, but I've gone to several of them. But throughout the country, there are Winter Marksman Leagues where you're putting during the winter, and there's 5 stations. 2 of them have marksman baskets. 3 have normal, like, recruit-style baskets. You keep points. A U-disc goes on there, so it's pretty neat. You can see up to the second of exactly where you stand. Depending on yours, they have different divisions, prizes, things like that. Well, prior to this past week, there have been some pretty high scores, and it's been pretty exciting. Like James Conrad shot a 70. Well, the best you can do is a 75 for 1 round, and then you ultimately do 3 rounds. Well, Eric McCabe in Emporia here just this last week shot a perfect 75, which means he made 25 putts from 20 to 35 feet, with 10 of those putts being on marksman baskets. Perfect.
Yeah, if you've ever put it on a marksman, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And now, like so far this year, Steve Brinster, he's actually the #1. He's got the highest for all of the U-disc for the year. But Emacs is the first one who's gotten the perfect 75. So he set that bar now. I never really thought about what that goal was. So now my personal goal is, and of course my highest has only been like 59 or something like that. But my goal is now to get 75. And then I want 2 rounds of 75. So now that's what we're watching. Who's going to be the first one to get 2 rounds of 75? Or, I'm gonna start watching it to say, what's the highest score? Like, I'd like to figure out that record. I like those kind of numbers. But still, it's pretty impressive. A lot of those, there's just a lot of fun, again, in that winter time, especially depending on the environment you're at. I've seen several of them that are in bars and various places, high school gymnasiums, churches. Right. Things like that. So, all right. All right, so on the last episode, we talked about Emerson Keith getting re-signed with Latitude. And I do apologize in that whole episode. I was calling him Keith Emerson. And it wasn't until I was talking to Brian Shintaku, the team captain for Latitude 64, team manager for Latitude 64. He was like, "You mean Emerson Keith?" And right away it just clicked like, oh man, I bet that whole episode and I had to go check it. And obviously I already had it recorded, so I put the little insert with my correction. But Emerson, who got re-signed last week, is off on a tear already. He has played, we are 3 weeks into January. He has played 2 PDGA events. He has won both PDGA events. He won this past weekend at the Heiserbaum, presents the Battle at the Bond, which is in Garland, Texas, and he won by 7 strokes. So, but he has won 2 events. Both of them have been C tier so far. Just looking real quick here. Again, by 7 strokes. He's a 1013 rated, and he shot a 1013 and a 1025. So he shot above his rating, so it's only going in the right direction. So I've now kind of created this in my own little world Emerson watch. We're going to see what he keeps doing. The week before, for those that don't know, he won by 4 strokes in a local C tier that was there in Texas as well. And again, shooting 1019 and 1041. So his worst round of 4 rounds matches his rating. I don't know. That's just pretty impressive. So
it's a good start.
Yeah. So like I said, we're watching. I'm rooting him. He's playing, I believe, Louisville this weekend. Yep, the Louisville winter warm-up. So rooting for you. Of course, rooting for all our Trilogy players, of Trilogy fans. But right now, I got to select somebody. And, you know, going into our first episodes when we talked about who we were rooting for. You know, I don't think any of us even talked about Emerson. And, but, yeah, he's definitely one to watch. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think they just announced his team release for next year, right?
Yep.
Opto
X Explorer.
Opto X Explorer.
Yeah, I saw a picture here that is ice clear. So it's kind of neat with some of these discs. I know, like the Lucid X Escape. Right. You know, that we're doing for the exhibit, and this.
I think I saw the Opto X Fuse in a nice clear too.
Oh, yep. So those clears, but even I think it was the SC, the Recoil and Pioneers, how vibrant those colors were. Yep. I mean, the Trilogy brands right now, they're doing really well and getting some of these vibrant colors. You know, so we need to stop with the browns and, you know, those really horrible colors, but keep doing this vibrant thing, and I think we're going the right way.
Well, I heard Dynamic just restocked solid color putters.
Oh yeah, that's
exciting
in his meeting. Yeah, so I can't wait to go down there again, and I think just to look at it, even if there's not anything I'm looking for, just to see them again. And again, it's kind of a joke that we've kind of always said, but going back to our whole collector conversation, where you have like the pre-made in Swedens, or whatever changes in a disc, but where you're looking for something that's different. Well, now we're going to get into the collector market where people are going to say, I'm looking for the pre-burst something, because they're looking for solid colors. But now they got the solid colors coming out, so I'm excited to see that. I think that's going to make a lot of people happy. And then the last thing that, you know, we talked about that on the update with Jeremy, but he also announced the Trilogy Challenge with the Keystone, with the Lucid Vandal, and then the TP Burst Gatekeeper. And for those who remember when we talked about it, the Gatekeeper was my favorite, my #1 pick of that new 6-disc lineup.
I thought it was interesting they went a little different route this year instead of 3 completely brand new discs. Well, it's 3 brand new discs, but instead of 3 that were isolated to just the Trilogy Challenge.
2 of them are.
Now, well, actually...
No, the Keystone's actually using
the Keystone, I believe, in a different plastic, they said will be part of the match play, correct?
Correct.
And then the Gatekeeper will be out in its regular Opto plastic, I believe.
Yep. Now, what were they doing for the match play? They were doing the Lucid X Escape and full solid coloring. And then, what was the second one? Do you remember?
The only other one I've heard about was the Keystone.
Yeah, and I know the Keystone is one of those fundraiser ones they're doing for the match play, but I don't think that's I think that's more of a fundraiser for the TDs who are doing that. I don't remember if that's the second disc. But but on that note, I mean, here coming up in on February 1st, the match play stuff's registration starts. So if you're going to do one of those, make sure you get on that. I ran 2 last year. Great time. Really easy to run. I can't tell you how easy it is to run. I mean, you can do it as casual or as organized as you want to, and all you got to do is get 16 people.
Yeah, I saw somebody yesterday on Jeremy's update saying, "Oh, I'm not going to have one of those in my area," and I don't get that.
Yeah.
If you have an area, you can have a match play.
Yeah.
Put it together yourself. It's simple. Contact them. They'll set you up. It's not hard.
Yeah. And if you ever wanted to do more, I mean, not everybody can be a TD. Not everybody has the time to be an organizer, a course, even sometimes volunteering, doing courses, working on courses, things like that. The nice thing about this match play thing is the United States Amateur Match Play is you don't have to be on site at all. It's all administrative from just behind the scenes. You could put out on Facebook on one of your local groups. You need 16 people ultimately to sign up. If you don't get the 16 people, communicate with DD and they'll work with you. But you get your 16. Once you get your 16, you set up the registration like on Disc Golf Scene, so you don't have to worry about collecting the money. You just let those 16 players get on there and do it. And then you just say each week, you can do it over the course of the weekend or the course of 4 weeks, which I do over 4 weeks. And you can say, each week, this is what you're doing. You could go simple and say, all 4 weeks, last year in Lawrence, Kansas, all 4 weeks were the same layout, same baskets, everything. So nothing changed. When those people are done playing, they communicate with you they won. You go on UDisc, you click a button, click update, and that's it. You physically never have to be there. Probably the hardest part, and I know there are probably easier ways to do it, is to distribute the players package. You know, kind of thing. So if you're doing over the course of 4 weeks. But even that, I went to the very first one I ran last year, and that was the only time. After that, I still got them out, or I gave out the different groups. So after like the first team won that I went to, I gave them the next team. So, I mean, there's ways to do it. All right, guys, so we're going to conclude with episode 5. But before we do, just to kind of, we'll finish out. Derek, you got a couple things you want to share with the world? Tell people what's on your mind?
We did find out the blueberry scent for the classic blend verdicts that I had talked about did not come in time. We still want to have those in time for GBO, so in order to do that, they have to be on the container that leaves for the States in the end of January. So we have changed that scent. Instead of blueberry, we will have either orange or pineapple. We're not 100% sure yet. That only affects about 500 of the runs. So we're not 100% sure yet which of those we're getting. We just know it's not going to be blueberry. So we'll all be surprised at the same time, I guess, when they come in. We did get approval for another exclusive mold. I'm not ready to announce that yet, but I will tell you the Air Sheriff is not the only Air disc coming this year.
Nice. So
I think people will be excited about this one, and not only is it Air, but it's got some special qualities to it. So like I said, that's actually going through a test phase as we speak, so I don't want to say too much about it. Hopefully a future episode we'll have something to talk about there.
Absolutely.
I want to get some final information before I spit out too much. Other than that, I can't think of anything.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to episode 5. I want to thank Derek for being here once again with me. For those who are watching and enjoy the show, please make sure you like the page, share the pages, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you would like to keep up with the YouTube videos that they come out because you're afraid you're going to miss it, right next to the subscribe, there's a little bell you can click on that will give you that notification, go straight to your phone or computer to tell you exactly when I'm putting out the next episode or what other video. Let's share the Trilogy love. Thanks, everybody, and you guys have a good day.